Gardener. Apart from being a cookery icon for 5 decades, Delia Smith has been back in the public eye recently campaigning for a further referendum on our EU membership, something that seems increasingly possible. She came into the studio earlier this week and I asked her to think back to how she felt on that day in 2016 when the country voted to leave the EU. Did she think then there would have to be a rerun of the vote?
Well, no, I was just absolutely devastated. And I just said to my husband, what's going to happen now? And he said one word. He only said one word: chaos. And that's what's happened. He was right.
I suppose what I'm asking is, did you ever accept the result of the referendum?
No.
So you always thought we're going to have to go back and fight this again?
Well, no, I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm like everybody else, you know, nobody knows anything. So what can you know? But no, I just was absolutely devastated. And I've got to confess to you that, you know, I'm quite a deep thinker. I think a lot and reflect a lot. And everything within me screams out, this is wrong.
You live in Suffolk, which I think every single part of Suffolk voted to leave. It was one of the most leave-y bits of the entire country.
Yeah.
You must talk to people around you a lot. Do you think it's possible that they're right and you're wrong?
I have tried, honestly, to see the other side. But, you know, I've got lots of reasons. And let's just stick to the referendum now for a minute. The referendum was called on a whim. It was about, you know, the Eurosceptics shutting them up in the Tory party. Nobody knew anything about it. Nobody had thought about it. Just call a referendum.
One of the other arguments people make about that referendum is that your side, the Remain side, talked endlessly about economics and numbers and money, and the other side talked about identity and passion and belief. In order to avoid the same result in another referendum, how do you think the Remain argument is going to have to change the way it presents itself?
Well, I think, you know, it's got to represent itself by saying, hell's bells, we've had 45 years of quite peaceful, calm living. You know, don't we all want to go back to that? Why do we want all this? It might take 10 years, it might take 20 years. Why does our country want all this when what was before was so much better?
Now, you've been a big advocate for what's called the people's vote, or the second referendum, or the other referendum.
Indeed.
And you've marched and you've spoken and all the rest of it. What do you think the question should be?
In or out?
Straight forward, in or out. So put Theresa May's deal to bed and then...
Don't mess with it, just in or out.
But that was what we had last time.
Yes, but we didn't know anything last time, and this time, my God, do we know? Chaos.
If you get another referendum, there might be the same result. Do you agree with Tony Blair that that would be that? You'd have to accept that was what the country wanted to do. That would be over.
We have to absolutely. That would be more democratic, because at least people know that they've got 20 years of chaos ahead of them. Right. You know, so therefore they do know what they're voting for.
So there's clearly a lot of passion here. We know you're passionate about cooking. We know you're passionate about football. Why are you so driven by this cause?
I think it's quite obvious, it's right in front of our eyes, that the whole world, if we're going to live in peace, has got to learn how to cooperate. Countries have got to learn how to cooperate with one another. And I think this is coming to the fore now, because in the last century we had a huge shock, because we had this devastating 2 world wars, the explosion of the atomic bomb. But we discovered something when that happened. What we discovered was that humanity, the spirit of humanity under those pressures, comes together. And when it comes together, it becomes really strong. And we were able, by that, to drive out, you know, the egotistical, isolationist regime that we were fighting against. Suddenly, the United Nations is formed. Then, a bit later, the European countries, devastated by the world wars, decided to try and work together in peaceful cooperation in order to stop anything like that happening again.
I suppose a thoughtful reflective Leave voter might say, well, actually, what we were fighting for was democracy and our own independent democracy. And the point is that if we get that democracy back completely independently, we can still have good relations with other countries, we can still hold out hands to other countries, we can be as pro-European as ever, but just not part of the political system.
Yes, I can see that argument, but I still see the bigger picture is that if we're going to have peace in the world, we've got to learn to work together.
There's going to be a lot of chaos in a lot of kitchens up and down the country in the next couple of weeks as people confront the bureaucratic and administrative horror of Christmas Day. What's your advice? Do you have any particular tip for them this year?
Well, no particular tip this year, but I do have the plan. You know,
Yeah.
I have the sort of last 36 hours plan, which is online. And if they follow that, think of me because I have to follow it. You know, I'm old now, I can't remember everything. So if you follow the plan, it says do this now, do this now, do this now. And millions of people have written to me and said it works.
Delia Smith, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you.